Welcome everyone to the Wheels Museum. Today we have a very special guest, Charles Rundels, and he's special for many, many reasons, but today especially, he wasn't feeling too well. It is all the way out in Los Lunas, but is so devoted to Wheels, he still came in to help us. And he does many, many things. He's fabulous waiting on the customers. We had a dinner at our house the other day as a fundraiser. He helps with that. He'll come in and vacuum the floor. So this is a kind of fabulous volunteer that we love so much and appreciate so much. So how did we meet?
Well, actually, so I had the opportunity of visiting Wheels Museum thanks to a friend of mine that I like to go hiking with. He's now going to be turning 81 this year.
Oh.
And he's as spry as you can be. He loves to swim, and when he's not swimming, he's on a bike, and when he's not biking, he's hiking. If he's not hiking, he's out walking with his dog or what have you. So he's living proof that you can be very active when you're in your 80s, assuming your health is okay. And he's quite slender. I think that's part of the reason that he still has his health, because as you know, anyone who's a little on the heavy side, they don't always fare so well when they get older. So I do recommend trying to keep yourself somewhat slender when you get older.
Stay on that bike.
And keep active. Yeah.
Today, Charles brought me something. He had a great idea to contact social studies teachers in Albuquerque from APS, and he brought me an entire list. He wrote the letter about that. We're going to send a letter to all the social studies teachers to tell them about Wheels Museum. We are working with APS on curriculum and with the Humanities Council and other groups to bring in more and more students, so we're having constant groups of students.
Well, yeah, I'm sure as your audience already knows, Wheels is an absolutely fantastic place for kids that are of the ages in the elementary school range.
Yeah.
They seem to just have so much fun here. And anytime I see a mother with small children, I tell her about Wheels. I say, hey, you might want to take your kiddos to Wheels, because the kids they get so excited when they see the trains moving. Of course, they love riding that train. We have that small, I don't know what you call it, miniature train, I guess. And so they really get a big kick out of being here. It's terrific.
Our biggest problem is children who cry when they have to leave. That's our big problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
There are some who get so tied up with the model trains that they don't want to get out of here.
Yesterday I went to the State History Convention, which is at Embassy Suites Hotel this weekend, and that was very, very interesting. Met a lot of people who are book authors, and one of the great interesting things that I learned there, the state of New Mexico has an RV that goes around to all the rural areas with museum exhibits.
Oh.
It's called Wonders of Wheels, so I have asked them that next year we would be the museum, so we're already working on that in the hopes that we can bring wonderful exhibits all around the state of New Mexico about wheels on wheels.
Well, one of the curious things about New Mexico is, I have to say, having traveled a little bit around the U.S., is that we were really well known for our museums.
Yes.
It seems like every dinky little town has its own little museum about something.
That's right. We love museums, culture, history.
Yeah, and we have art galleries and things like that.
Yeah.
When I visited Alaska, there was quite a few artist colonies there, but only one museum, but it was really interesting. It was a museum of the history of women in Alaska, which was really quite interesting.
That's wonderful. We're working with a group that's doing, in fact, two groups that are doing exhibits about the women who worked on the railroad. One's at 516 Arts, and then another one is in Santa Fe, and we're going to have an exhibit here about women who worked on the railroad. And that's kind of hard to find, because mostly it was obviously a male-dominated business. One of the things that women did on the railroad is they had the job to come at midnight here to the rail yards and wash the locomotives. So it was a very horribly difficult job, summer, winter, fall, and spring. And I always make a joke when women come in and I'm giving a presentation. I ask them, how many of you would like this job? I've never had anybody with it. Yeah, but that's the kind of thing they did. There were some women in offices in this building. This was the freight building, and there were some women working in here. But mostly this was obviously a male bastion, and very few women.
Well, just the other day, a woman came over, and I didn't ask her, when all this happened, but she came in and said that she was a stenographer here and that she had an office here somewhere.
Yeah.
So she kind of remembered roughly how the building
What it was
looked
like.
back in
What
the
it was
day.
like. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to point out that as for myself, I found this, being a volunteer here at Wheels, was quite the learning experience, particularly for the history of Albuquerque. Now, I grew up here in Albuquerque, and my grandmother had always told me that Albuquerque was a railroad town. And I didn't understand what that meant, because of course lots of towns have railroads going through them. And so I figured, well, what does that really mean to be a railroad town? And it was here that I learned about the shops and the factories and all the people working here, and that basically was the start of new Albuquerque. And my grandmother lived in old Albuquerque, and I remember seeing some mail she received with the address on it, Old Albuquerque.
Really?
Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
That's what it said.
I've never heard of that. We have had, our family ran a business here for 90 years, and we did imports from all over the world. I remember people writing us from India and various places, and they would say Freed Company, New Mexico, and we'd get the letters.
No mention of the city.
Didn't even say the city or anything else. Yeah. What did your what did they do? What did your grandparents
Well,
do?
that's just it. My grandmother and her husband were refugees from Oklahoma, from the Dust Bowl.
That's a refugee. Okay.
And they, I don't know if they were trying to make it to California and just broke down and wound up here, but for whatever reason, they wound up here, and they had a ranch right there, right next to Old Town. It's hard for people to realize that part of Albuquerque was rural. There were all horses, there were farms, they were raising crops and things because they're near the river there. And it was not a city. In fact, it's been surrounded by the city. So in the middle of Albuquerque, by Old Albuquerque, you have horses and farms and things.
Yeah.
Right smack in the middle of it. And my grandmother raised chickens, she raised guineas, but mainly the focus was on horses. They kept the horses in pens. I had to shovel some of the crap that horses produce. And so anytime that we heard a politician claim to be a stable genius, I was really appreciative, because I had to clean out a stable. And I know that a stable genius is someone who can clean out a stable much better than anyone else.
Never heard that term.
So anyway, I was impressed by some of the aspects of the history of Albuquerque. I learned just by looking this up that in 1706, it was founded by Francisco Cuervo y Valdez, that the city was named after Francisco Fernandez de la Cueva, the 10th Duke of Albuquerque. I don't know what he was famous for, but there is a town of Albuquerque in Spain. But the difference is they put an extra R in there. It's Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And we had Albuquerque in our name too, but somehow it got lost. And I've heard different stories about how that happened. I heard that the railroad dropped it. I heard that the post office dropped it. Whatever. But the spelling of Albuquerque is the same as the spelling in Portugal. The town of Albuquerque in Spain is in the province of Badajoz in Spain, and it's on the border with Portugal. And so in a sense it's shared between Spain and Portugal. Some famous person came from Albuquerque and went to Portugal, and now the Portuguese have the word Albuquerque all over the place. They have an Albuquerque in Brazil, they have Duke of Albuquerque, he was over in India, creating all sorts of trouble. And then, so the question is where did this name even come from? Now Spain, as you know, was occupied by the Arabs for a long time. So you wonder, is this one of those Arabic names? They claim that Albuquerque comes from Alba Quercus, which literally means white oak in Latin. That's what they claim, Alba Quercus. But that could be, because the area has a lot of white oak trees. That's where they do cork. They make corks for wines and so on. So it could be that that's where that came from. But there's also the Arabic word for apricot, which is Albuquerque, Albirquq. And that sounds a little closer to me. It has that extra R in it, and that's why I kind of wonder if maybe that's where it came from, but they don't actually know for sure. But it's just one of those weird things that you talk about Albuquerque, and everybody wonders, where the heck did that come from? Well, that's kind of it. It's either from Latin or it's from Arabic. Who knows?
Interesting.
So it's one of those things.
Interesting. Well, that's something we haven't talked about as far as Wheels Museum.
No.
We do go way back in the history, and that's very good to know something like
You're
that.
right.
Yeah. And WHEELS is an acronym. Talking about words and names, WHEELS is an acronym. So if anybody knows what that means and they come in here, having heard this YouTube, I'll give you a free T-shirt. Just let me know what that means.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, we have a deal on T-shirts anyway. $10 for a T-shirt.
We have
not bad.
we have a sale on white T-shirts right now through April. Yeah.
Right. No, there's nothing wrong with $10 for a T-shirt.
That's a pretty good deal. Pretty
No,
good
but
deal.
You can't get that at Walmart.
Next
So-
week we're going to start working at the Rail Yard Market. We open on May 5th at the Rail Yard Market, and we work over there on Sundays until October, and then the T-shirts will be $15 over there. But that's still a very, very good price. So we hope you'll come to see us at the Rail Yard Markets and at Wheels on Sundays now all through the summer.
One thing you might notice if you go to the rail yard markets, and right next to the blacksmith shop, which is where the market is a building that has carpeting, it has lights, it's all nicely done inside, but it's closed and no one uses it. So it's something, but something to notice while you're there is that's kind of what some of these buildings can turn into. They can be turned into a place where you can hold events and do something. And that would be nice for this whole area to be developed so that it becomes useful to people in Albuquerque and has a reason for people to come to the Borealis neighborhood, because that's the neighborhood we're in, is the Borealis
That's
neighborhood.
right. Yeah. Of course, we do events here. We're doing one today, actually. A balloon pilot's coming to talk, and I'm giving a talk. We do constant events in here, but I know what you mean. Bigger and bigger. We want to get bigger and bigger. We're interested in the machine shop, the Babbitt shop. We're interested in much more space. We're running out of space here.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential down
of
here,
potential.
and it's really too bad. I realize it would take a lot of money to get everything fixed up to be used, but there's a lot of potential down here, and it's a shame not to develop it, because it is here. We have all these
Exactly.
huge buildings. They're perfectly solid buildings. The roof could stand some changing out, but that's what you expect in a building that's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so we're looking for lots of money and exactly what you're saying, to redevelop it in the highest way for our community. We did federally funded studies that show 1 million people a year will come here if we get the machine shop ready, so.
yeah, there would be reason to come down here, because we not only would have this museum, we'd have the marketplace, we'd have, of course, C&M, which is developing this film area, and we'd have other buildings. There's all sorts of cute old buildings that we have on this property that all they need is some windows to be replaced, the roof to be redone,
Yeah.
and they could be turned into, who knows, a place where you grow some garden plants or something like that.
We have the original firehouse from the railroad is sitting here, beautiful fire station. And I've been trying for 30 years to get that to be a fire museum. It hasn't happened. A lot of people have shown interest, but it has not happened. So
Or could be a restaurant maybe.
could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
And we have an area here next to the Babbitt shop, which has all these restrooms, so that could serve as restrooms for
Yes,
tourists
it
coming
hasn't
down
been used
here.
for
Yeah,
50 years, but yes, that's right.
yeah. It would have
Enormous
to be.
potential. If you haven't been down here to see what we're doing, Wheels is pretty exciting. We counted recently over 10,000 exhibit items, so if you want to come and count them with us, you're welcome to.
Right. Yeah, so I think there's a combination of history and fun things to see and do.
Exactly.
And that's what I found the museum was kind of interesting for, is just that it had both things for adults and for kids.
Yeah. I had a call a couple of days ago. A man is not able to take care of them anymore, and he's giving us 200 railroad books. We have about 1,000 railroad books already, and he's
Alright.
giving us 200 more very beautiful, valuable railroad books. So that's the kind of donation that people want to give us. It's a question of space to keep them, and what do we do with them. But if you
No, that
have
sounds-
a collection of something that you think would be important to the history of New Mexico and transportation, we'd love to talk to you about that as well.
No, that sounds terrific.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? Yeah.
And we've had people who, they want to know about Route 66.
Yeah, oh yeah, Route 66.
And so Route 66
Mhm.
has an interest to them. And I can also mention, just as an aside, that there is a transcontinental highway that is sort of, you might say, the kin to Route 66 that you never hear about. Route 66 went from Chicago down to Santa Monica, California. So that's not transcontinental unless you consider the Great Lakes the end of the continent or something. No, there's a highway that goes all the way across the United States, and that's Highway 60, and it also goes through New Mexico. Highway 60 is the one you take to, once you get off the highway, the freeway, you take it over to Mountain Air. So Highway 60 goes all the way from Virginia Beach in Virginia all the way out toward California. It used to go to Santa Monica also, but then Interstate 10 took a portion of it out. But the point is that Highway 60 goes all the way across the country. It basically goes through the middle part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd have to say, I drove it the other day, and I recommend driving Highway 60 if you're heading off to Southern California, because you go through the Salt River Canyon. It's really dramatic looking. And there's all these old bridges that have been abandoned. The highway takes a different route, but it had former routes that you can kind of see, and people can walk on that if you want to. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, so 66 isn't the only route here in New Mexico. It's not the only route of interest. I'd say Highway 60 counts also.
The whole maze and arteries of the highways and the
Yes.
trains is unbelievable. What we
Yes,
have in our country, although other countries have many too, but it's
And we have a volunteer who's interested in researching all the rails here in New Mexico.
yes.
There are some rails that were developed entirely for commercial purposes. They never took passengers. They were entirely for hauling coal,
Right.
hauling timber,
Right.
things like that.
Yeah.
And so we have all kinds of railroads here in New Mexico. Some that are still working and others not. But there are some railroads here in New Mexico that have diesel electric engines, the whole bit, but they don't take freight and they don't take passengers.
Talking about railroads, I do want to mention to the viewers, we are planning a trip to Kansas City in September, and the deadline for that trip is May 15th. So if you'd like to come with us, it's going to be a fabulous trip, seeing a museum, seeing the Kansas City train station, going on Amtrak. If you'd like to come, please give us a call before May 15th. We have quite a few people coming, we have a few spaces left. So it's 505-243-6269. We'd love to have you going to Kansas City with us. We've done trips like this before, and we have an awful lot of fun. It's a great group of people, and everyone's kind and happy and enjoys being together as a community group, supporting Wheels Museum and seeing other places in America by train.
Well, Kansas City has a lot of history to it too,
Yeah.
that affects the whole West. The
right.
main thing that affected the West is the fact that the train itself determined where people would take their cattle in the course of running the cattle to what they call a cow town, right? You've heard the phrase, this is a cow town. Well, Albuquerque actually never was a cow town. To be a cow town, you have to have the railroad reach you and then have people driving the cattle from whatever, Texas in this particular case, to that destination. And it became a very rough town with all the prostitution and all the bars and so on. They called them saloons, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But Kansas City was the source of a lot of that's where the railroad came through and went through Kansas, creating cowtown after cowtown after cowtown, depending on where the railroad went.
Right.
And Kansas City itself is famous for its stockyards. I think that's what they call them, is the stockyards, where they would slaughter the cattle and so on for making it into beef that they would then ship off to Chicago. There's always been a connection between Kansas City and Chicago, and I always thought of Kansas City as being the Chicago of the West, so to speak.
That's very right, yeah. So please come with us, give us a call and join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a great trip. Great trip.
Well, Kansas City also has a fantastic downtown.
Yes.
Beautiful buildings downtown. They also have their own mafia, thanks to the meatpacking business. The Kansas City was known for the jazz music that was produced there. Some famous jazz musicians came from Kansas City. So Kansas City has its own history.
Yeah, you like barbecue?
Oh
Like
yeah,
to see the museums? It's going to be a great trip.
they're famous for their barbecue.
Yeah.
That's right.
We are almost sold out on May 25th, but please call us if you'd like to come to the Chinese American Contribution to Railroads of the Southwest. Fred Friedman is going to give that presentation, and it's May 25th at 10 o'clock in the morning. We're going to have Chinese folk dancers. We're going to have some refreshments. Fred Friedman was the head of state transit. This is going to be a very, very interesting presentation, and many, many people are coming to it. So if you'd like to come, give us a call at 505-243-6269. We have several music events coming up. On June 1st at 11, we have Doug Figgs coming in. He plays Western music. We have on June 15th, we have Ronn Perea talking about historic Route 66. He's spoken with us many times, written many books, and is a fabulous speaker about the history of New Mexico and loves Route 66 and what goes on Route 66. On July 20th at noon, Steve Cormies is going to sing for us and play guitar, country music. He's quite a famous movie star, so you'll probably recognize him if you come into that event. On August 10th, I think this is going to be wonderful. Phil and Roseanne Archuleta are going to speak about New Mexico markers at 11 o'clock in the morning. So let us know if you'd like to come to that. And on August 18th at 2 p.m., Joel Alden Wyatt, who's a famous country western singer nationally, is going to give us a performance. So please stick with us. If you have ideas for events, give us a call. We're always looking to do more events, programs, and field trips and parties and everything we can do to help save the important rail yards of Albuquerque. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful having you. You're a Toastmaster, and you're a wonderful speaker and interesting stories and a wonderful friend and a wonderful volunteer. So I came all the way from Los Lunas with the cold to help me today. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.